Okay, I have a little bit of insight here to add. We're talking about the Ukraine war. Uh, everybody, a lot of people are expecting this winter offensive on the part of the Russians into Ukraine. Of course, this invokes the memory of the winter offensives fought by initiated by the Russians in World War II as they pushed the Germans out of Russia or the Soviet Union. And from there, they pushed on into Berlin. So there was a winter offensive, I believe, in 1943. There was a summer offensive in 1943, 1944. I don't remember all of the details off the top of my head. But just as a little side note before I get into what I wanted to say about this winter offensive they're talking about now that they're expecting is, it seems like every reference to military history made has to do with World War II. It's as if no other conflicts ever existed to these people. And that's probably because most people have no clue of military history outside of, World War II, especially in the United States. When we talk about the United States, maybe besides the Civil War, one of the most heavily studied wars is World War II. And in the common among the people, among the average person, really, it seems like military history starts and ends with World War II, maybe Vietnam, and that's it. And there is no military history outside of that. And when we're making references to current conflicts, how about we try to be a little bit more diverse in the historical precedents we're enumerating. There was something called the Franco-Prussian War. I see some parallels there between this conflict and that conflict. There was something called the Crimean War, probably one of the most relevant conflicts to really reference. World War I, we see some similar conditions occurring in Ukraine right now as what happened in World War I. There have been literally, I would say, at least a couple thousand major conflicts in recorded human history, and all anybody wants to do is reference World War II. And it's like, no, man. World War II was not the only war that ever happened in the history of in the history of the world. Okay, so let's lay off the World War II references every other day. Everything is a reference to Hitler or Stalin or to this aspect of World War II or that aspect of World War II. It really reflects this nostalgia among Americans over World War II because it was the last war that the Americans actually won, unless you want to count the Persian Gulf War as a war. But it's actually the last war that we decisively won here as Americans. So maybe that has something to do with the nostalgia. So going back to this winter offensive, so they're saying, oh, there's going to be this winter offensive, and I just don't know if looking at this from the Russian perspective, if I was a Russian planner. The Russian economy is doing good. So economically, it seems like they can continue this war for some time. They seem to be doing good in managing their personnel, keeping losses at a minimum. It seems to me like their industrial base is just gearing up for a war footing as we speak. I don't think the industrial base has really begun to crank out what it's going to crank out in terms of weapons, and that'll be good. That'll be good for the economy in Russia overall, I would say. War is good for the economy if you're not actually getting attacked a lot yourself. So, that's why a lot of people would argue World War II was good for the United States. Well, of course it was, because, nothing was destroyed in the United States. So we were the ones destroying other people's shit. None of our shit got destroyed. So we came out on top. And the same thing could be said for Russia, I believe, to some extent. Yeah, here I am making World War II references. I couldn't help it. But I don't see where, people talk about this winter offensive as if it's going to be this huge, decisive maneuver warfare style offensive, and they're just going to do a grand encirclement, come down from Belarus and cut off all of eastern Ukraine from the rest of the world, and surround Kiev, and it's going to be this big decisive knockout punch. And I highly doubt that. If anything, they're going to make some offensives, in and around certain parts of the country. That would be pretty dramatic, but nothing nearly as dramatic as what people seem to be expecting. I mean, really what Russia can do, dragging out this war for like a couple years at least, I think it serves the Russians very well. Not only from the perspective of the grand chessboard and the global geopolitical game, the longer the Russians keep the war going in Ukraine, the more that the United States drains its own resources and sends them to Ukraine, the better it's going to be for Russia in the long term. I believe that they want the United States to continue to send resources and money and whatever else to Ukraine. I think that serves them very well. At the end of the day, it's only going to hurt the United States. So I really don't buy, just me personally, that there's going to be some grand winter offensive. I think they're doing just fine. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. It's looking like, just based on everything I'm seeing, that the loss ratio is for the military personnel is something like 10 Ukrainians for every 1 Russian. That's what it looks like. Ursula von der Leyen kind of gave us another tacit confirmation of that the other week. So the Ukrainian losses are really high. The United States is sinking a lot of money into the situation. I think the Russians are perfectly fine with that. They understand that the aid from the United States at this point it's not going to change the outcome. If there never was any aid going to Ukraine from the United States in the first place, this war would have already been over. But I think the way the Russians would see it would be, let the United States continue to send weapons and money and whatever else over there. Let them do it. And let the political problems ensue that are going to ensue. Let this war drag out for a few years. The Russians can handle it just fine. It's the Europeans and the United States that are going to suffer for the prolongation of this war. So I think, they're going to, the way I see it, I would expect them to do something more like, okay, they mobilized all these troops. They got, some say, 500,000 troops now mobilized and heading towards the front if they're not there already. And maybe they're going to do something like what they've been doing, send elements of these mobilized troops to the front with the support and with the cooperation of probably active duty soldiers, and then rotate them out very frequently. Put them up there for 90 days, rotate them out, put another element up there, and just keep rotating the troops out so that they're not subjected to the harsh conditions for so long. That's what they've kind of been doing. So I wouldn't expect them to take all of these 500,000 forces and use them all at once in some huge, 1,000-mile radius pincer movement. It's not going to happen. I think that they're going to use them a lot more conservatively. If the recent, if what's happened thus far is any indication of what their future actions are going to be, so I think it's going to continue to be like this slow, steady grind, and I think they're going to continue. They're inviting the United States to bring in more troops, more resources from the United States. They want that, okay? So that's where I'm at with it. So in other words, no grand super offensive. Listen, people. World War II was not the only war that was ever fought in history. Okay, we have to get away from it a little bit and start thinking about military history in its totality. And if we understood military history in its totality, then you would have been better off understanding how this war was going to unfold. I got to reiterate this again. These expensive, complicated, high-tech weapons that the United States has, that was never going to affect the outcome of the war. First of all, we simply haven't sent enough of them there. Second of all, military technology, such as it is, has never been in history the decisive factor, okay, in the outcome of war. How much money you sink into a war has never been the decisive factor in determining the outcome of any war, okay? In the World War II, it seems like right now we're almost following the same kind of doctrines as Germany did. Germany built lots of expensive, complex weapons that they couldn't actually support in the field, that weren't actually practical. They had the best tanks, of course, but it didn't matter because the Russians had lots and lots of cheap and satisfactorily effective tanks. Okay, so it's almost as if we're taking more of a German Third Reich doctrine with how we compose our military than anything else, okay? So there goes a World War II reference, that's not cherry-picked. The Russians have the same sort of doctrine that they had back then, which is cheap, robust, reliable, practical weapons. And it worked for them in World War II, and it looks like it's working for them now. With these $10,000 drones that they're using, which are basically propeller-driven cruise missiles, and they're working, okay? So that's where I'm at with it. I am out.